Welcome to The Explainer. Every year, the World Economic Forum asks hundreds of global leaders to look out at the horizon and tell us what they think are the biggest threats we face. Today, we're unpacking their 2022 report, and let me tell you, the picture it paints is, well, it's pretty unsettling. So let's get right into it. So first things first, what's the global mood? Well, out of nearly 1,000 experts they surveyed, a massive 84% feel worried or concerned about the world's outlook. That's a huge number, an overwhelming consensus of anxiety, really. So the big question has to be, why? Well, the core reason for all this anxiety is what the report calls a divergent recovery. The basic idea is that instead of a global crisis bringing us all together to heal, it's actually doing the opposite. It's pulling the world apart and creating this really sharp divide between winners and losers. And you know where that divergence really kicks in? With the most fundamental tool we had, healthcare. Just look at this contrast. It's pretty staggering. While advanced economies were rolling out booster shots with over 70% vaccination, the 52 poorest nations, and that's home to a fifth of the world's population, had only managed to vaccinate a tiny 6%. So you can see, this isn't just some health gap. It's more like a chasm that's creating real-world tensions. When entire countries feel like they're being left behind, it becomes nearly impossible to get everyone on the same page to tackle all the other huge shared problems we're facing. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit and look at the immediate fallout from all this. What are the biggest risks staring us down over the next 2 years? And what we've got is a pretty dangerous cocktail. You have the environmental threats we kind of expect, like extreme weather, but mixed right in there are the raw social scars of the pandemic, people losing their jobs, a breakdown in community trust. The crucial thing to get here is that these aren't separate issues. They're all feeding off each other. And in fact, this is really telling. When the experts were asked, okay, what's gotten the most worse since the pandemic began? It wasn't economics or the environment that topped the list. It was us. It was about people, social cohesion just falling apart, livelihood crises, and our mental health taking a nosedive. The crisis has really just frayed the very fabric of our communities. And this has a real devastating human cost. Look at that number, 51 million. That's the estimated number of additional people who have been pushed into extreme poverty because of all this. It just erases years of progress and pours gasoline on the fire of social division and resentment. Now, let's zoom out a little to the medium term, say 2 to 5 years down the road. This is where those societal scars we just saw are starting to trigger some really serious economic consequences. And here it is. This is that divergent recovery in stark economic terms. By 2024, advanced economies are projected to actually be above their pre-pandemic growth trend. But meanwhile, developing nations will be a shocking 5.5% below theirs. That's not just a gap, it's a canyon opening up in the global economy. And that economic divergence is directly fueling the top medium-term risks. You see debt crises climbing the list as countries struggle to pay their bills. And importantly, this phrase, geoeconomic confrontations, shows up. It's a fancy term, but what it really means is countries using their economic power, like trade, finance, and tech, as a weapon against each other. So we've looked at the short and medium term, and they're really dominated by the pandemic's fallout. But when the experts were asked to look out over the next decade, the picture becomes alarmingly and singularly clear. So just think about it for a second. After all the societal, economic, and geopolitical risks we've just discussed, what one category do you think completely dominates the long-term view? Well, the answer is just overwhelming. The top 5 most critical long-term threats to the world, according to the survey, they are all environmental. Every single one. From our failure to act on climate to the direct consequences of that failure, the health of the planet is the defining challenge of the next decade. Full stop. And just to put a really fine point on it, climate action failure isn't just the #1 threat on the list, it's also ranked as the single risk with the potential to cause the most severe damage of any threat over the next 10 years. Okay, so with such an intense focus on this environmental catastrophe, and for good reason, the report raises a critical question. In staring so hard at this one giant threat, are we developing blind spots? Are we maybe overlooking other dangers that are growing just as fast? For instance, take our digital lives. Our dependency on tech has absolutely exploded. And in the background, threats like ransomware attacks have just skyrocketed. I mean, up 435% in a single year. But despite that clear and present danger, technological risks like cybersecurity failure fall way down the list of long-term concerns. The report's authors basically suggest this could be a really serious blind spot in how we perceive risk. So ultimately, this all brings us back to the report's central and pretty sobering message. All these risks, societal, environmental, economic, technological, they're all interconnected. But here's the catch. Our ability to solve them together is being critically weakened by the very divisions the pandemic has deepened. And that leaves us with the final, and maybe the toughest, question of all. In a world that feels like it's pulling apart at the seams, how do we possibly come together to solve problems that affect every single one of us? That right there is the challenge that defines our time. Thanks for joining this explainer.